It is therefore vital for you to keep the king in as safe a position as possible. For this purpose, a special move was invented. It is known as castling and allows you to place your king on a square where it is not easy for the enemy to get at him. We're studying Chapter 3 of our book, E.S. Lowe's Chess in 30 Minutes, Chapter 3, Other Important Rules, and in this episode of our podcast, we're going to learn about castling in just a few minutes. Stay tuned. Podcast Miniseries, E.S. Lowe's Chess in 30 Minutes, Study and Practical Application, read by Jeremy Morrow. We're now on Episode 8, and the chapter we're reading is Chapter 3, Other Important Rules. Subheading, Castling. Page 41. Chess in 30 Minutes. Paperback by E.S. Lowe. Published in January 1st, 1955, 5 out of 5 stars. Barb 1992 said, 5 stars. Good handy book. Reviewed in the United States on May 14th, 2014. Verified purchase. Book is in really good condition. Arrived before scheduled time. Member of my family has had it for years. Now I can learn playing chess from my own copy. Clear and simple guide for a beginners. Buy this book on Amazon. Link in the description. In our last episode, previously, we read Chapter 2, Winning Methods in Chess. We read all the different subjects: check, discover check, double check, forking check, checkmate, comparative values of the pieces, and the pawn's motion power. Now we're starting with a brand new chapter. Chapter 3, Other Important Rules. If you haven't already, please send some likes, send some love, subscribe, click the notification bell on Video Gamers Oasis for the latest updates on my videos. I do appreciate it. Thank you so much. You have learned that the outcome of the game depends on the fate of your king. It is therefore vital for you to keep the king in as a safe position as possible. For this purpose, a special move was invented. It is known as castling and allows you to place your king on a square where it is not easy for the enemy to get at him. Subheading, Castling. There are two kinds of castling. The king can castle with the king rook or with the queen rook. The king rook is the rook nearest to the king in diagram 1. The queen rook is the rook nearest to the queen in diagram 1. Now let's look at diagram 30. Here's diagram 30 on the bottom of page 41, which shows the position before king side castling. And the title reads Diagram 30, Before Castling King Side. Brackets, in the following diagrams, only white's castling is illustrated. Actually, the mechanics of black's castling is precisely the same. Next page, page 42. To castle king side, white moves his king 2 squares to the right. Then he places the king rook to the immediate left of his king. We see diagram 31 after castling king side. Next paragraph. Now let's look at castling from black's point of view. Since he's at the opposite side of the board, he castles on the king side by moving his king 2 squares to the left and placing the king rook at the immediate right of his king. Once both players have castled on the king side, their kings face each other across the length of the same vertical row. Brackets called a quote-unquote file. Castling on the queen side presents much the same kind of picture. Diagram 32, before castling queen side. Here we have the diagram before castling queen side. Moving on to page 43. Next paragraph. To castle on the queen side, white moves his king 2 squares to the left and then places his queen rook to the immediate right of his king. This leads to the position of diagram 33. Here we have diagram 33 after castling queen side. Next paragraph. When black castles on the queen side, he moves his king 2 squares to the right, and then places his queen rook to the immediate left of his king. After both kings castle on the queen side, they face each other across the board along the same file. As a general rule, you will be castling on the king side. In most games, this is safer than castling on the queen side. A valuable point to remember is that since castling assures the safety of your king, you do well to castle at the earliest opportunity. Castling is an important and desirable move, but it is hedged about with certain limitations. Sometimes castling is impossible for the time being. Sometimes it is altogether impossible. First, let's consider the situations where castling is temporarily impossible. This is on page 43, moving to page 44. Next paragraph, page 44. You cannot castle in reply to a check. However, you may be able to castle later on when your king is out of check. You cannot castle when the king's move would place him on a square controlled by an enemy piece. However, you may be able to castle later on when that square is no longer under enemy control. You cannot castle if your king is to pass over a square controlled by the enemy. Again, you may be able to castle at a later stage when that square is no longer controlled by one of your opponent's pieces. Now, before we examine the last exception, take another look at diagram 30 and 32. You will note that in these quote-unquote before castling positions, the squares between the king and the rook are empty. You cannot castle whenever any of the squares between the king and the rook are occupied. It does not matter whether the piece occupying either intervening square is your own or your opponent's. The prohibition applies in either event. However, if at some later point the squares between the king and the rook are emptied, you may then be able to castle. All these exceptions are temporary, but there are 2 cases when castling is permanently ruled out. If your king has already moved, then you can never castle for the rest of the game. If your king has not moved, but one of the rooks has, then you cannot castle with that rook. However, if the other rook hasn't moved, you may be able to castle with that rook. Page 44, moving to page 45. Next paragraph. The main point to keep in mind, then, is to avoid moving your king. For if you do that, you forfeit your right to castle. And now for a brief review using the 3D chess game. Diagram 30. Before castling king side. It's on page 41. On this example, we have the white king on section E1 and the white bishop on section H1. Diagram 31. After castling king side. Page 42. Now the king, the white king, has been moved to section G1. And the white rook has been moved to section F1. Diagram 32. Before castling queen side. In this stage, we see the white king is on section E1, and the white rook has been moved to section A1. Diagram 33. After castling queen side. Page 43. Of the white king on section C1, and the white rook on section D1. Next subheading, capturing in passing. We're going to cut our reading short and continue on another episode. This has been a podcast miniseries, E.S. Lowe's Chess in 30 Minutes, Study and Practical Application. I'm your host and reader, Jeremy Morrow. We just completed Chapter 3, Other Important Rules, the subheading, Castling, on page 41. Tune in next episode, episode 9. We're going to read Chapter 3, Other Important Rules, subheading, Capturing in Passing, on page 45. Stay subscribed to Video Gamers Oasis. Click the notification bell. Send some likes, send some love. I do appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and enjoy your game of chess and enjoy your weekend. Bye for now.